There's Something in Granny's Garden by Steve Cherring. Acknowledgements. Written by Steve Cherring, May 2010. With special thanks to John Day, Philippa Bauer, Darren Cade, Christopher Cherring, and James Messam. Granny Gurgles is in her twilight years. She spends her time knitting, baking cakes, watching TV and gardening. Two of her favorite hobbies are riding her classic motorbike and collecting garden gnomes. The gnomes are her passion. She has around 60, which she keeps at the bottom of her garden in a very special spot. Her quiet, simple life is about to take an exciting extraterrestrial turn because there's something in Granny's garden. It was 6 a.m. on a summer's morning, and Granny Gurgles had quite forgotten the porridge that was threatening to crawl over the edge of the heavy iron saucepan. She'd put it on to simmer almost half an hour ago. The contents were now rapidly solidifying, with brown smoke puffing through the gluttonous bubbles. "What's that smell?" thought Granny. "Oh dear, I've done it again." "Oh well, I suppose I'd better throw it over the compost," she sighed. It was Granny Gurgles' 86th birthday. She was slightly built, reaching 4 feet 7 inches in her shiny black lace-up walking shoes. She always wore her favorite violet hat with a pop-up yellow daisy on top. It gave her the appearance of being almost 5 feet tall. She'd never felt comfortable with her lack of height, compensating for it whenever she could. She had the usual aches and pains that came with her age, but always tried to stay as cheerful as possible, humming. Opening the back garden door, she stepped daintily down from the freshly painted red step onto the old stone path, carrying the burnt saucepan. She sang in her tiny, high-pitched, gurgling voice. "Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me." There was no sun yet, but it was certainly on its way. "It's going to be a nice day today," she said, looking up at the hazy, bluing morning sky. A large, scruffy tabby cat stretched up from behind the roses, purring loudly. "Hello, Mr. Pickers," Granny whispered as she began the 120-foot journey to the end of the well-kept garden. She admired a robin as it gathered some leftover homemade cake crumbs she had put there for him last night. "Enjoying your breakfast?" she asked politely. The robin carried on, sorting through the goodies, not worried about her gentle intrusion. Just before she got to the compost bin, she noticed a faint orange glow coming from the gnome cave. The gnome cave was both a shelter and a shrine to lost and found garden gnomes, some of which were almost as old as her. With almost 60 in the collection, she had decided to pay the gardener to build a small cave from twigs, branches, and leftover cuttings from the pine trees. It was surrounded by honeysuckle, with a raspberry bush creeping through the gaps of the nearby fence, and made a nice addition to the natural rustic part of the garden. Most of the gnomes were placed inside the cave, and the ones that didn't fit were lined up around the entrance. There were all sorts. Some had arms missing, some no legs or chopped hats, and many needed a fresh coat of paint. But they were all special, and she wouldn't have parted with any of them. Suddenly, Granny noticed that there were lots more gnomes than usual outside the cave. They were all iggly-piddly, and some were face down. "What has happened here?" she thought. Moving closer to the entrance, she bent down and peered at the strange orange glow which seemed to be coming from the back of the cave. "Hello! Who is there?" demanded Granny nervously. She held the iron saucepan a little higher, just in case, but there was no reply save a faint echo. There was indeed something in the cave other than gardening gnomes. But it certainly wasn't part of her collection or anything that had strayed from the garden center. Granny moved even closer, stooping down as far as her aching back would allow. She saw an eerie eye piercing back at her, then another, and then yet another. 3 eyes. Most odd, she said. She pushed her arm inside and grabbed at a shape lurking at the back. There was a squeal, and she pulled out the weirdest creature she'd ever seen. It was an alien, about 9 inches tall. "My word," said a puzzled Granny Gurgles. "Wherever did you come from?" The creature handed Granny a funny-looking electronic gadget. It had an array of buttons and colored lights on the front and a display showing a collection of weird-looking characters that made no sense at all. But before you could say Martian, they changed into ordinary English saying, "Universal Language Display Unit," and "I come in peace. Please don't harm me." Granny gently put the alien down on the grass and stared at it. It had 3 of almost everything. 3 eyes, 3 arms, 3 legs, and 3 fingers on each of these 3 hands, but only 1 head and 1 mouth, though containing 3 teeth. "Well," said Granny, "they do say everything comes in 3s, don't they, my little friend?" The creature looked up at the old woman, wondering if this powerful-looking giant was friendly. The powerful-looking giant could see the fear in the alien's eye and tried to reassure it. "Don't worry, you funny-looking fellow. I'm not going to hurt you," she said soothingly. She picked the alien up, stuffed it neatly under her arm, and carried it along the old stone path back to the house. "Come indoors with me, and I'll look after you until we can sort this out," said Granny Gurgles. Granny quietly closed the back door and took the alien into the sitting room. Hanging in front of the little bay window was an old budgie cage, which had been empty for a very long time. She opened the door of the cage and placed the bemused alien inside, then closed it, saying, "Just you wait there, and I'll go and make a nice cup of tea." She went out, leaving the universal translator on the couch, where it fizzled and changed color, seemingly at random. She didn't notice the stream of messages being displayed. The alien, still not at all sure that Granny was friendly, sat in the cage clasping at the wooden perch in sheer terror. The situation worsened when it saw a small mirror and a cuttlefish bone. It reeled back in horror when it caught sight of its reflection in the mirror, wondering if the cuttlefish bone was all that was left of some ghastly scientific experiment. It didn't want to be the next victim. A few minutes later, Granny returned with tea, milk, her finest tea set, and a generously sliced jam cream sponge cake. She opened the cage door and passed a small china cup of Earl Grey to the alien, followed by a slice of cake. The alien picked up the small teacup and sipped at it. It was pleasant. Next, he took a big bite of cake, and it was almost wonderful. Catching sight of the universal translator, Granny picked it up again. "Ah," she said, "I see what this is for. You're talking to me, aren't you?" "Yes," it displayed. "Then take me to your leader." "Oh no," replied Granny Gurgles. "We have a hung parliament, you see." "Are you saying you've killed your leaders?" "Don't be silly," Granny laughed, adding, "Have you a name?" The alien said nothing, feeling thoroughly confused. Granny scratched her head. "Well, I'll have to think of a name for you then," she said. "I know. I'll call you Cedric, after my old, poor budgie. He had a terrible memory, forget where he lived and got lost. It must be, at least 5 years old, right? That's settled then. Cedric it is." She looked over her Charles Dickens-style glasses and said, the alien, Welcome to Earth, Cedric. Suddenly there was a pop. She realized she sat on the universal translator, which had now turned itself off. Oh dear, clumsy me, said Granny. I'm ever so sorry, little Cedric. But don't worry. I have a nice old telephone we can use. Cedric looked at the old woman and just carried on munching the lovely jam cream sponge. He had no idea what she was going on about. Getting up, Granny opened Cedric's cage and carefully took him out. She produced a tailor's measuring tape and began noting his vital statistics. I'm going to make you a cardigan, she said. It's going to be difficult with that extra arm, but I'm sure you won't be disappointed. She placed her new friend on the very comfy cottage armchair next to the window and turned on the television. Taking needles and wool from her knitting bag, she sat down again and began to twiddle, click, and purr one furiously. The television lit up, and the awful, unmistakable sound of Coronation Street oozed relentlessly from the speakers. Cedric stared curiously at the screen with his 3 eyes. The music started to make him feel sleepy, and the repetitive, boring script finally lulled him into a deep and restful slumber. You're missing it, said Granny, but there was no reply. Cedric was away with the stars. Oh, the poor thing, she whispered. He's all tucked out. Best to let him rest. She took a fine lace doily from one of the armchairs and gently lowered it over Cedric's tiny chest. Granny finished the cardigan in just a few hours. She was fast. It was pink with yellow stripes, and 3 arms were postbox red. I can't wait to see Cedric in this, she said, rubbing her little hands together gleefully. At about 9:30, Cedric awoke to the most terrible rumbling sound he'd ever heard. He climbed down from the armchair and made his way to the kitchen door. He easily stepped through the cat flap, since he was much too small to open a huge door anyway. The rumbling sound roared louder and louder. There was an old garage at the side of the house, and Cedric peeped through a crack in the double door. Granny was sitting on a Harley Junior motorbike. She was sporting a black crush helmet and wearing matching leather all-in-one zip-up jumpsuit and big black boots. She was smiling from ear to ear, revving the machine as high as it could go. Yippee! Cried Granny. These new sparklers are working a treat. She said, Cedric. Hello, Cedric. Why don't we go for a spin, eh? Climb aboard, she said. Cedric up into the rare basket, which had been welded there for shopping, not for E.T. Granny fastened him securely with 2 straps. Hold on tight, she said, and they sped down the driveway, spitting up copious amount of gravel as she wheel-spun skillfully into the road. The Harley charged along. All the windows in the houses rattled as it roared by. Cedric felt his 3 little teeth being dragged to the back of his throat with acceleration. The local youths often gathered on the corner with their scooters and girlfriends, and today there was quite a crowd of them. They saw Granny Gurgles speeding towards them, and one shouted, Hey, let's burn up this old motorbike. There was yet more noise as the neighborhood fell victim to the disturbing sound of spluttering scooter engines. The youths raced off after Granny on their inadequate 50cc pop-pop bikes. There were clearly no competition for Granny Gurgles, the dare-level stunt rider from up the road. One boy rode straight into a hedge when his brakes failed. Another barely reached 15 mph because of his very heavy girlfriend. A third bike, which had been poorly maintained, simply blew up on the spot. It and the road disappeared in clouds of smelly blue smoke. Granny left them all standing as she sped away. Cedric clung on for dear life, wondering if he'd make it to the end of the journey alive. Granny screamed with excitement. Hooray! She cried. A few onlookers were laughing at the folly of the would-be show-off youths, who now had a well-deserved egg thrown all over their faces. Granny and Cedric approached the shopping mall. I'm just popping into Tesco, said Granny. I need some scones and fairy liquid. Oh, and a bottle of fabric conditioner. I finished the old one washing your new cardigan so that you can wear it today. The motorbike skidded into Tesco's car park. Granny parked it on its Cedric and went looking for a chopping trolley, sliding a coin into the slot to release one. She put her crash helmet into the baby seat and placed Cedric inside. Just sit there and hide. You can look through the visor if you like, she said. Cedric seemed to understand. At least he nodded. Of course, as everyone knows, walking through the automatic doors at Tesco can be an unforgettable experience. The actual walking through the door bit is okay, but then you get the dreaded warm air-conditioned blower that follows, either blows up your dress or steals your wig. And if you're eating popcorn, just forget it. So for a 9-inch alien weighing in at only half a pound, it's quite dangerous. As Granny pushed the trolley inside, she was busy gazing at all the buy one get one free offers. So she completely failed to notice poor Cedric as he rocketed off with a gush from the warm air blower and landed who knows where. Granny, forgetting she only needed 3 items, was preoccupied with filling up the trolley as Cedric found himself clambering along a shiny laminate floor. Totally lost, he wandered up a small corridor and found himself inside a ladies' restroom, not that he knew that. At first, it seemed deserted. Then he noticed 4 closed doors. Curious. He looked under the gap at the bottom of one of them and saw a pair of shoes. He reached in and began to tap his 3 fingers on one of the shoes to see if it was Granny. Loud ear-piercing screams were heard throughout the shop as 4 scared, angry and red-faced women scrambled to leave the restroom. 3 burly security guards promptly rushed in, but soon returned to the shop floor puzzled at finding nothing. Cedric, now back in the shop, was about to be squashed by the boot of yet another shopper, oblivious to his presence. In the nick of time, he was grabbed by a relieved Granny Gurgles. "There you are. I was getting very worried," she said. Cedric was now sitting on top of a full shopping trolley. "May as well stock up seeing I'm here," chuckled Granny. The checkout girl scanned the items as usual. She picked up Cedric, who froze on the spot, but could get the scanner to recognize him. Granny laughed, saying, No, my dear, that's mine," as she stuffed Cedric carefully into her handbag. There wasn't room on the motorbike for the mountain of shopping, so she arranged for Tesco to deliver most of it. She strapped Cedric onto the carrier, started the alley, and they set off home. They got back half an hour later to find a small crowd outside the front gate. There were loud cheers from the neighbors as Granny roared into the drive. Cedric hid as well as he could. It turned out that the youths from the corner had been so embarrassed at being taught a lesson by an old granny that they'd move on to another area. They were unlikely to return for fear of being laughed at all over again. The head of the neighborhood watch committee walked over to Granny and shook her hand, saying, "Look, Miss Gurgles, it means a lot to us what you did. I mean, and if there's anything we can do for you, please just let us know." "That's ever so nice of you. I'll keep it in mind," replied Granny, as she locked up the garage and went inside the house. She plugged in the kettle and got everything ready for a nice brew of tea. Then she remembered Cedric's new cardigan, which was still hanging on the line. So she went out into the garden and felt to see if it was ready. It was nice and dry. She called out to Cedric. He skipped over the step and looked up at her. "Right," said Granny. "Hold up your arms and we'll slip this on, shall we?" Cedric held out his 3 arms and a lovely, soft feeling came over him when the cardigan came into contact with his skin. "Oh," "You do look nice," said Granny, as Cedric moved across the garden, trying out his new look. He looked really excited and happy with his fantastic present, skipping up and down the lawn. He showed it off to Mr. Pickles, the tabby, was looking from the top of the garden fence. Then he paraded in front of the robin, who had now been joined by a pigeon, which cooed relentlessly. About 20 minutes later, Cedric appeared to be having trouble walking. He staggered a bit. Suddenly, he fell over and just lay there. "Oh my!" panicked Granny. "Cedric, what's wrong?" Cedric didn't move. She looked closer and touched his little chest. He wasn't breathing. Cedric was dead. Granny Gurgles tried everything to relieve him, but it was quite clear that Cedric was not coming back. After a couple of hours, Granny decided she should bury him. It seemed the right thing to do. She dug a small hole near the gnome cave, put Cedric into a cheese and onion crisp packet, and gently, with a tear trickling down her left cheek, lowered him silently in. She said her favorite prayer as she filled in the tiny grave, then planted a miniature rose tree at the head. "Oh, my poor dear Cedric," wept Granny Gurgles. Granny was terribly sad at the loss of her new friend. She'd gazed across at his little cardigan hanging from the cottage chair near the birdcage, though she cheered up when she realized Eastenders were about to start. It was just after supper one evening a few weeks later that Granny took another sad walk down the old stone path towards the gnome cave. She stared sadly at poor Cedric's spot and gently touched a red petal on the little rose tree. Overwhelmed, she whispered, "Oh, poor Cedric." As she tended the small grave, she saw that the ground had been disturbed. "Dear me," thought Granny, "those naughty foxes again." She started rearranging the earth, but it only dropped lower. She tried tidying up with a trowel, but all of a sudden realized there was no sign of Cedric's remains. She found what was left of the crisp package, but it was clearly empty. "Oh no, he's gone," she shouted. She cried most of that night. She just couldn't sleep for worrying what had happened to poor Cedric. The next evening, Granny was in the kitchen making a cherry cake when a noise came from the sitting room. She entered just in time to see some colored lights glinting from under the couch cushion. Reaching under, she found none other than the universal translator. "Ah," she said jubilantly, "so I didn't break it when I sat on it." She took the device back into the kitchen and made some warm milk, hoping that it might help her sleep. She just poured the milk into a mug when the translator fizzed into action. So Granny picked it up and looked at the screen. A message appeared. "Thank you for looking after one of your kind. He's back with us now and recovering rapidly. He sends you a message and a special gift for your friendship during his last days on earth. He hopes you will accept the gift with his love. Please press the orange button whenever you're ready to accept it." The screen grew dim as the machine waited. Granny could hardly believe that her little Cedric was still alive and well. It was all so wonderful that she sat down with her milk and cried with joy. Looking at the device again, she examined the buttons, thinking, "I wonder if it repeats of Coronation Street or something. Ah, how nice of little Cedric. Maybe I'll press the button. I don't suppose it'll hurt to see." She counted to 5, closed her eyes, held her breath, and pressed the orange button. She was almost blinded by a brilliant orange glow, nearly as bright as the sun. It filled the kitchen and reflected everywhere. For a minute or two, Granny couldn't see. Everything was bathed in bright orange, and colored waves undulated all about her. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the light vanished. Once she could see again, she put the device on the table and picked up her milk. She had this sort of warm feeling all over. But apart from that, nothing seemed to have happened. Granny Gurgles shrugged her shoulders and went upstairs. She popped under the covers of the small, comfy bed and soon drifted into a beautiful, deep sleep. Next morning, Granny slowly opened her eyes and looked up at the ceiling. "That's funny," she said. "Haven't seen that clearly for, I don't know how long." There was an awful din outside. She was about to get very cross when she realized it was birds singing. Her hearing was sharper too. It was unbelievable. She started to get out of bed, ever so careful, as she always did nowadays because of all the aches and pains. But no aches, no pains. Where have all these horrible aches and pains gone? Wondered Granny. She walked to the bathroom and suddenly realized nothing hurt as she did so. "Why, bless my soul," she cried. "I just felt like dancing. It's all very strange." Her voice sounded different too. Just inside the bathroom, there was a tall dress mirror. Granny leaned towards it and, looking herself up and down, saw a woman in an old woman's dressing gown. When she looked closely at her face in the morning reflection, she didn't see an old woman of 86. No, it was a young woman of 26. She smiled at her reflection, saying, "I suppose I'd better go shopping. It looks like I'm going to need some new clothes. And maybe, just maybe, I'll treat myself to a bigger, faster motorbike. Yippee!" And so, it was that on a very special summer's morning, a very special Granny awoke to find that she'd been given a very special gift from a very special friend named Cedric. Granny Gurgles' life would never be the same again. Thank you very much for listening. All and out. One love.